Halo Infinite is fun. Alright, cool. See ya. Oh, what, you're still here? What? Oh, what, you want me to talk about the campaign? Oh, you don't? Oh, well, shit, too bad. That's what I'm gonna do. So, I finished Halo Infinite's campaign a while back, and honestly, I'm alright on it. It was definitely the best campaign 343 has put out, but, you know, there's also not super tough competition. Halo 4 had a pretty decent story, but gameplay-wise, it was kind of lacking. Then Halo 5 had, well, the opposite problem. But this time around, it seems like Halo Infinite managed to strike a balance. Infinite's gameplay managed to bring us a perfect mix of 343 and Bungie's styles, and even managed to finally settle the sprint debate for most people. On top of that, we've finally got an art style that's kind of a return to form, and a weapon sandbox that's mostly stripped away a lot of the fat of the previous games. But alright, the story. The campaign of Halo Infinite is actually, well, really fun. The gameplay loop stays satisfying the entire time, and the story itself definitely managed to strike an emotional chord with me a couple times and kept me pretty engaged the entire runtime. And not to mention the soundtrack, dude. Though we didn't get Marty O'Donnell back for this game, we did get 3 absurdly talented composers. Curtis Schweitzer, whose biggest previous work is probably the Starbound soundtrack, which is amazing. Then Gareth Coker, who did the Ori, Ark, and Ruined King soundtracks. And Joel Korolitz, who did, these games. I'm sorry I'm not familiar with your work, dude, but you did a fucking great job. All this sounds great so far, so why am I just alright with Infinite's campaign? Well, first of all, thank you for asking, that's very kind of you, and oh my god, I love your shirt, dude, where'd you get that? Thrifted? Dude, that looks really good on you. Anyways, so why am I just kinda iffy on the campaign? Well, for as great as the gameplay is, and as much as the story was able to get me emotionally invested at times, it just felt like 1/3 of something greater. Not to mention a few other problems I have with the campaign, which I'll get into, but first, let me give you a quick rundown of the story.
You have one bullet against an entire army. What can you do on your own?
I told you. It's enough.
Infinite starts out about 2 years after the events of Halo 5, which is quite the time jump, and, well, you definitely feel it. Halo 5's campaign isn't directly brushed to the side. Elements of it are definitely still present, but you can tell 343 was doing their best to pretend Halo 5 just didn't exist, without actually erasing it from canon. And like, I mean, this isn't inherently a bad thing, since I'm not exactly the biggest Halo 5 fan either, but I feel like there could have been a smoother way to transition us into this new change somehow. Because as bad as 5's campaign was, there were definitely some interesting plot threads left behind. The Chief and Arbiter finally reuniting, Fireteam Osiris and Blue Team, the AIs claiming the mantle of responsibility and taking over the galaxy. All of these concepts are interesting in their own right, and frankly deserve to be fleshed out, just with better writing. Instead, when Halo Infinite begins, Chief is back on board the Infinity, somehow, as it's being attacked by the Banished from Halo Wars 2, in orbit around Zeta Halo. We don't know how they found it. So, yeah, there's quite a bit of catching up to do. And does the rest of the campaign explain all this? Well, I mean, no. Well, sorta, if you count audio logs, I guess. Yeah, okay, no, not really. Basically, Halo Infinite acts as a soft reboot to the series. It doesn't decanonize anything, but essentially sets us up for a new story very reminiscent of the original concept for Halo Combat Evolved. And that's great! And also sometimes not so much. Right, so this is the first time a Halo game has gone open world. Okay, no, it's not quite that bad, but it gets a little close at times. The most Ubisoft-y features of Infinite's world are definitely the FOBs and the Banished facilities. However, as basic and repetitive as clearing these places is on paper, in practice, they never really got that boring to me. And I think that has everything to do with the sandbox that 343 managed to create for this game. Especially the grapple hook. Holy shit, dude. Like, look, I know there's an argument to be made about how this thing kind of makes vehicles less impactful, blah, 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 and okay, there's some good points to be made there, for sure. However, in response, I give you See? Also, there are a few boss fights scattered throughout the map and story, and these are definitely a step up from 343's previous attempts. Now, they definitely aren't revolutionary or anything, not even close, actually, but honestly, anything's better than those fucking Warden Eternal fights, and they're a lot more fun and unique this time around. Some of them do kind of suffer from the bullet sponge effect, sure, but at least the bosses vary. From a brute with a unique chopper, to a trio of red hunters, to a grunt? Just a little grunt guy. Look at him. While the open world objectives do start to get pretty samey, my actual main gripe of the open world isn't with the objectives, it's with the lack of environmental diversity. Don't get me wrong, what we do have on display here is beautiful, and I found myself just climbing to the tops of mountains for the fun of it and staring at the vistas on display here, but this is it really. Green grass, cool mountains, and trees. Lots of trees. Oh wait, I'm sorry. There are 2 other environments. Forerunner structures and the inside of banished outposts. But that's it. Throughout the whole story, you'll pretty much only experience these 3 settings, and it honestly all started to blend together. Now compare this to the Halo rings of the previous games, and you get this. Where the previous Halo rings we explored gave us, yes, green forest and Forerunner structures, they also gave us snowy mountains, creepy-ass swamps, barren deserts, and even that. Meanwhile, in Infinite, we just get these. So this realization is where I kinda started to feel like this is only part of a Halo campaign. Almost as if something like 2/3 of the game were missing. Oh hey, look, that's actually exactly what happened. Yeah, so turns out Halo Infinite had a pretty troubled development. I'm sure that those of you who have the game already knew that just by playing it, but man, what I didn't know is that apparently the development process was akin to 4 to 5 games being produced simultaneously. Like, what the hell was happening, dude? You know what, honestly, that's just a testament to what a miracle it is that this game came out as good as it did, both story and gameplay wise. Speaking of the story, let's get back into that. So honestly, the story of this game basically suffers the exact same fate as the world itself. What's there is interesting and pretty well done, for the most part, but it again only feels partly finished and basically ends just as things really start ramping up. It seems there are plans to add story DLC during Infinite's alleged 10-year life cycle, so it's good that we won't necessarily have to wait for an entirely new game to have the story continue, but still. What we have available to us now for that asking price of $60 is a little bit lacking. And I think a huge contributor to that feeling is there being a huge lack of any large set-piece moments. A small-scale, more laid-back Halo story isn't necessarily something I'm opposed to. I mean, Halo 3 ODST was just that, and it was great. But honestly, with the conflict that Infinite is clearly building to, the more laid-back nature of the missions just doesn't really fit. Like, there are some cool action scenes, but everything just feels so limited by the fact that every cutscene is dead set on being a one-take. Yep, that's right. No gorgeous establishing shots, no interesting shot compositions, cuts and dialogue scenes, basically nothing Halo's most iconic cutscenes are typically known for. And unfortunately, most of these one-takes just consist of the camera following Chief over his shoulder, or the camera moving around Chief and the weapon as they speak in like a dark room. Cool. I mean, by virtue of the game already being really pretty to look at, these cutscenes look nice for sure. There just isn't a ton of variety. Probably the most exciting moment of the campaign is this moment.
Open up. Go.
And nothing really elevates further than that. Now compare that to this.
One question. What if you miss?
I won't.
Okay, anyways, I'm supposed to be talking about the story. I'm sorry. So what is the story of this game exactly? Well, after the Banished defeat the UNSC and Atriox, who is the villain from Halo Wars 2, and now that I think about it, there was probably a large population of people who played this game not even knowing who the fuck he was. Huh. But anyways, Atriox drops Chief off into space, and then we're introduced to the pilot, who has a family, so now we have to feel for him or whatever. But actually his family's dead, so it doesn't matter. We do a bit of a time skip, as indicated by the pilot's beard growth, and then, suddenly, the ship picks up a friendly tag, and...
UNS!
Alright, so I know I just shit-talked the cutscenes in this game, but god damn, the game opens with a really strong one for sure. Anyways, the pilot powers Chief back up, Chief says some one-liners, and then immediately gets started and goes off to kill the Banished. After blowing up a whole ship full of aliens that had families, lives, and dreams. Chief and the pilot discover another signal coming from the spot where there is an explosion on Zeta Halo, and where Cortana allegedly died? Yeah, so apparently Cortana is dead already. Allegedly. Maybe. Perhaps. But what Chief ends up finding is baby Cortana. The weapon. Who was a copy of Cortana created to delete her and stop her galaxy rampage that she was going on with the Guardians. A galaxy rampage which we don't really get to see. Neat. However, once the weapon deleted Cortana, she herself was supposed to be deleted as well. But now, Cortana's gone. Somehow. And the weapon is still here. Mysterious, ooh. Now, while you guys figure out why the fuck that happened, turns out Atriox, the dude who beat Chief's ass in the first cutscene, is dead now too, and leading the Banished now is Escharum, some wrinkly old brute who likes talking about glorious death and fires in your heart and other shit. I don't know, he's a little uninteresting to be honest. Man, it seems like a lot of important stuff happened during that time skip, huh? Anyways, we soon find out that Escharum/Atriox have been working with Squidward, the Harbinger, who seems to be part of a new race we've never seen in Halo before, so that's pretty cool. What's slightly less cool though is that apparently the Banished and the Harbinger are working together to wake up a different race of beings that was imprisoned by the Forerunners that are apparently even more dangerous than the Flood, and can transcend time? Or something? I mean, it's cool as a concept, it's just not cool for humanity in the game. You know what, never mind. So now you and Cortana, the weapon, need to help the UNSC recover on Zeta Halo, and defeat the Banished, and the Harbinger, in order to prevent what would probably be the end of humanity. Again. Cool. On paper, this is a pretty decent Halo concept, and for the most part, I am very on board with where the story is going. Where my problems really lie is with the execution, and, well, the amount of story that we actually end up getting. Unfortunately, what a lot of the missions for the campaign ended up becoming was, hey, we gotta go stop the enemy by scanning and or blowing up this thing, and then an Escharum monologue, and then a mid-tier boss fight, and then find this power cell and put it in here, and that's about it. Oh, and that reminds me, Escharum. You might be wondering who the fuck that even is, and, well, yeah, me too, dude. Turns out after that sick introduction to Atriox in the game's opening cutscene, during that time skip we experienced, Atriox died, and now Escharum, this random dude we have zero connection to, is leading the Banished. And you know, this isn't an unsalvageable situation. There's ways to develop a previously unestablished villain partway through a story, but the bait and switch definitely wasn't a good start, and they also don't develop him, like, at all, really. Escherum's entire character is basically boiled down to the dude who just gives speeches about how cool the Banished are, and how lame the UNSC is, and how he wants a glorious death. Never had this archetype before. Wow. I mean, the writers definitely try to redeem him as, spoilers by the way, I'm gonna start getting into those, so if you haven't played the campaign yet and you don't want to know, skip to here. When Chief kills him, we get this line.
I don't understand. You showed him respect. He was a monster.
Yes. But at the end, he was just a soldier. Hoping he'd done the right thing. Questioning his choices.
But this shit, like, it doesn't feel earned at all. I'm sorry. Well, I guess now that we're in spoilers, I can talk about some of my more specific issues with the story before getting into the stuff I actually did like. First off, it turns out Cortana actually is dead. Like I know I said that earlier, but I kind of implied it may not have been true or whatever, but no, she died. Off screen. Interesting. Like, okay, we did kind of get a send-off for Cortana that was really well done in Halo 4, and I feel like this is just kind of trying to subtly undo the action of bringing her back to life in the first place, and then reset her entire character through the weapon. It just feels wrong to have such an important character killed off screen, even if it would be for the second time. However, like I said, this is basically a third of a story, so maybe she really will come back, and in that case, this criticism won't hold. But I get the feeling they truly are trying to reset the Chief and Cortana dynamic using the weapon, and the original Cortana may actually be gone for good this time. And if that's the case, this just doesn't do her justice in my eyes. Like, okay, you turned her into the villain, that could potentially be interesting, but we don't really get to see much of her in this state. Actually, all we see of her time as a villain in Infinite is through these flashback sequences, and in them she becomes a mass murderer.
The intricacies of any action are complex. The reactions numerous, yet mostly predictable. Look upon Doisek one last time, and remember, you chose this path.
Cortana becoming such a massive asshole that she is fine destroying an entire planet was definitely not something I was expecting, and obviously this kind of puts her into the irredeemable territory as a villain, meaning she would probably have to die anyways, but you'd think we'd at least get a moment with her where she is somewhat redeemed / apologizes to Chief, and we sort of get that, but in the form of an echo she left behind for Chief. Maybe this worked for some people, but for me, I wanted more out of this interaction. It just felt so disconnected and one-sided, especially compared to the goodbye Chief and Cortana had in Halo 4. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Halo 4 was still the true goodbye, but to bring her back so quickly then kill her off again just as quickly just feels so cheap to me. It just kind of leaves me wondering what the point was.
Look at us. We just keep saying goodbye, don't we?
Yeah, I know! But okay, enough of that. What did this campaign get right? Well, for starters, the Master Chief himself. This campaign managed to get us back on track to the path 343 started in Halo 4. That being the whole Chief learning to be more human thing set up by Cortana and Lasky in Halo 4.
Before this is all over, promise me you'll figure out which one of us is the machine.
Chief, I won't pretend to know how you feel. I mean, I've lost people I care about, but never anything like you're going through.
Our duty as soldiers is to protect humanity, whatever the cost.
You say that Like soldiers and humanity are two different things. And soldiers aren't machines. We're just people. I'll let you have the deck to yourself.
She said that to me once. About being a machine.
I know some people prefer the Master Chief to kind of remain this blank slate, mostly silent badass archetype, but honestly, I love the humanizing Chief angle. I really don't think there's a downside to making it easier to emotionally connect with your main character. And while this isn't like Red Dead 2 levels of writing, I think Infinite did a great job of this. This time around, we really begin to actually see what effect Cortana and Lasky in Halo 4, and I guess the events of Halo 5, had on Chief. One of the largest indicators of how far Chief has come is this.
I'm worthless. You should leave me here with the rest of the carpets.
We all fail. We all make mistakes. It's what makes us human.
I'm sorry, Chief, but how have you ever failed?
I should have protected Cortana. Stopped everything from going wrong. I failed her. I will not fail you.
Chief.
Whether this is his first time coming to this realization or not, we don't really know. But it's clear that him actually referring to himself as a human for once, and being able to relate to the pilot here, indicates that what Cortana and Lasky had told him really did get to him, and in a good way. However, we also managed to see the fear and guilt it seems to have put in him, as evidenced by when he almost deletes the weapon, as he feels guilty for what Cortana became and is hell-bent on never letting that happen again. But slowly, throughout the campaign, and after listening to the echo that Cortana left behind for him, Chief is able to learn to trust again, to work as a team with the weapon, and both of them are able to learn from Cortana's mistakes. You know, that mistake of killing potentially billions of people, but anyways. Unfortunately, this is about as deep as the story goes in terms of characterization for the Chief. Our other two characters, the weapon and Echo 216 / the pilot, have their own little arcs as well. The weapon is basically a newborn Cortana, for lack of a better term. It's actually pretty impressive how 343 managed to make her feel like a separate character, as her naivete and tone of voice really do a good job of letting us know this is not the Cortana we've come to know in all the other games.
Incoming.
But what if it's a friend?
It isn't.
Her arc, however, is pretty much tied into Chief's, as her role is mostly to act as a catalyst for Chief learning to trust again, as I mentioned before, as well as arguably feeling like the more human character in the duo, just like old Cortana. Additionally, she does slowly come out of her more naive mindset a bit, and plays a role in the pilot's development too, but outside of that, not much else. That being said, she was still a really likable character to me, arguably even more endearing than the original Cortana. Then we have the pilot, who, as we know from that opening cutscene, actually had a really strong start. For most of the campaign though, a lot of his character is really just constantly pushing back on what Chief wants to do and kind of reluctantly helping as he has no other choice. Based on what I see from online reactions, a lot of people found this annoying, and yeah, maybe a little bit, but honestly I find this aspect of his character pretty understandable. I mean, he's just a normal guy. He's not even a Marine or a pilot, as we find out later. He was a mechanic on board the Infinity that stole a Pelican and ran when the Banished attack started. He doesn't have a lot of combat training, he's not a super soldier, he's just a guy that lost his family and wants to live so he can go home. And yeah, the Chief has trouble empathizing with that, at first, as he basically kind of just shrugs off any complaint or request the pilot throws at him. Up until the same moment here, where the Chief is able to empathize with the pilot, and simultaneously awake some newfound courage in him as well. Now, that about does it for all the characterization. It's simple, sure, but well done regardless, I think. But again, like with most everything in this campaign, I would have loved to just see more. More characters like the Arbiter, other Spartans, or Lasky, and more in-depth character arcs for everyone as well. I'm sorry, I'm getting into negatives again, my bad. Outside of the story and characters, I also enjoy a lot of the little details that reward longtime fans of the series. For instance, there's this moment when Chief is going through the weapons deletion protocol, and one of the keywords is Samuel.
034.
Doing?
Samuel.
You said... I thought we were a team.
Samuel being one of Chief's old squad mates who died back on one of Chief's very first Spartan 2 missions. And this little nod would probably only be noticed by those who read The Fall of Reach, or just lore nerds in general, and I love that shit. Plus, Steve Downes' delivery of this line really sells the pain that name holds for Chief, further playing into that humanizing Chief theme. I know I kinda shit-talked the audio logs earlier, and that criticism still stands considering you have to completely rely on them to accurately catch up even somewhat on what happened since Halo 5, but they are still interesting regardless. From the series of logs chronicling Lasky's escape from the Infinity, the story of a squad of Spartan 4s trying to kill Eshram on their own, to simple squads of Marines just trying to make it, there's a lot for people to get into here if they want to. Of course, it would be nice if more of these types of interesting stories had some sort of presence in the main story. Well, okay, one of them does, that being the squad of Spartan 4s I mentioned before, as you do find them throughout the campaign. But in what state? You know, as I continued to write the script for this video, I kind of realized I was more disappointed with this campaign than I initially thought. Maybe it was me coping with the fact that I paid $60 for it instead of just playing it through Game Pass, but either way, it's weird because what is here is generally pretty good, and the game is super fun to play, but I think my disappointment mostly stems more so from the knowledge that there should be more. Like, is this campaign truly a shining example of 6 years of development time? No, like, not even close. It just unfortunately feels like for every good thing I have to say about this campaign, there are like 3 negative things that creep up in my mind to accompany it. And I mean, that sucks. Halo is probably my favorite video game franchise, and it pains me to have to talk about it like this, but man, as much as I want to be supportive of 343, their upper management, or whoever, is just consistently showing us they don't know what the hell they're doing, or what we as fans want. And ultimately, this is probably more about the core issues that exist within the AAA gaming space as a whole right now, where companies are just completely fine with shipping out half-baked bullshit and cutting costs wherever they can using contract work, but if I get into that right now, this video will probably double in length. Ultimately, Halo Infinite is a great first act of a campaign, with some good characterization, a great soundtrack, and a really fun gameplay loop. But you know, we're kinda missing a huge chunk of the story and a myriad of things that I guess we truly took for granted in previous campaigns. And as much as I want to end this on a positive note, I find myself struggling to find the genuine words to do so. Halo under 343 has become like that person you keep giving second chances to over and over, but no matter what you say or what they do, they just keep coming up short. And it's frustrating, man, because I want to see this game succeed so bad. Halo Infinite has all the pieces it needs to become the best Halo we've seen yet, but it just isn't being assembled correctly, and something needs to change, or else I worry Halo really won't ever make it back to being what it once was. And maybe it was never meant to. Maybe that's me expecting too much at this point, I don't know, but it's what I feel. And I think the most positive way for me to end this video is to express my desire for more. Because I think as long as we still have people talking about this game, whether it's positive or negative, that means at the very least we still have people that care. And now 343 and Microsoft just need to prove that they do too. Thanks for watching this video, guys, and if you made it this far, then please feel free to like or leave a comment or subscribe if you like this and want to see more videos like it. It just kind of encourages me to keep making them at a faster pace. I'm gonna make them regardless because I like doing it. It's a little hard when it's not like your main thing, you know? But regardless, if you watched it, that's more than enough, and I appreciate it.